with stylists and makeup artists who are trained specifically in textured hair and deeper complexions. Her partners include Warner Brothers Discovery, Disney, L'Oreal, New York Fashion Week. You may have seen lots of posting last week, and IMG. And she's been featured in Forbes, Inc., Variety, Hollywood Reporter, Allure, and The Insider. Please help me welcome Maud. Next, we welcome Miss Roslyn, or Roz, Brewer, who is the president of Spelman College. Ms. Brewer is a renowned executive recognized among Fortune's most powerful women. She is a former CEO at Walgreens Boots Alliance, COO of Starbucks, CEO of Sam's Club. She's held senior roles at Kimberly-Clark, and currently she leads Spelman through pivotal transition and champions educational equity and leadership. Her board roles include United Airlines, KIPP Foundation, the NMAAHC, our African American History Museum, and has prior board positions with Amazon, Starbucks, Lockheed Martin, Molson Coors. She also is a limited partner with the Atlanta Falcons, which is pretty awesome. And she's a chemistry graduate of the illustrious Spelman College, active in philanthropy for education, healthcare, and economic empowerment. So Maud and Roz, thank you again, and I will turn it over to you.
Thank you. Thank you so much. Thank you so much. Very excited to be here, and it's truly an honor, President Brewer, to be in conversation with you about the business of beauty. I would love to start and really bring it back to Spelman and really around your story. And what I appreciate is that your career has not been linear. I know at Spelman you majored in chemistry and then have gone on to be in literally the highest ranks as an executive, as CEO of Walgreens, CEO and president of Starbucks. Given your experience, can you talk about how you think of innovation business at Spelman and really the importance of that with the work that you've done?
Great, thank you. So it's quite an honor to be here and to be seated next to you. You're a living example of what great looks like. And also, too, I just admire that you're stepping out on a front that's very well needed. But as for me, I am in what I think is a crazy moment for me in my life to be running higher ed. But it is the highest honor of everything you just said about me. This is the best role in my life. I finished Spelman a long time ago, but I'm coming full circle. And what I'm hoping to bring to this role, to this moment right now at our college, at my college, is the business of higher ed. And I think it's really important right now with what we're facing, but it also reminds me how important it is to always be ready because you never know what change is going to happen. But when I think about more specifically STEM and why is it critical right now, there's a couple of really important facts about a Spelman graduate. First of all, we graduate the largest number of Black women in the STEM disciplines. We are also the largest number of feeder pools to PhD programs. So we support and provide the largest number of Black women PhDs in this country from any college or university. Hazel, wrap that up. Now, having said that, it's now time to modernize the liberal arts environment. And that's the discussion we're going to have today about why we think it's important to take our STEM discipline to something that can be commercialized.
Yeah. And just to speak a little bit more on that, President Brewer, with STEM especially, we hear a lot about engineering and technology when we think about the respective area. And for me, what I've been really interested in is beauty. Why beauty? What was the strategic positioning and opportunity that Spelman saw to really be the first HBCU to create a cosmetic chemistry program?
Sure. So what Maud is referring to is that as we modernize our liberal arts institution, which is really important to do right now, we're not going to change who we are, but we're better at manipulating data for bigger outcomes. So while we've been astute in the STEM sciences, what we're doing right now, one of our centers of excellence is around advancing STEM. What we're doing is taking everything we do in our biology, biochem, chemistry areas, our med prep, is to think about clinical science. And we are very well positioned to do that. And what that means is that we are combining textile material science so that we can talk about different textures. Those textures happen to be hair and skin science. And we are set to do that. It also brings us along on our journey because 3 years ago at Spelman, we started the Center for Black Entrepreneurship. And it is supported by the Balmer Group. And what's exciting about it is in the midst of this transition of rethinking liberal arts at Spelman, we asked our young women, how do you view yourself right now? You're a student? I don't want to understand what job you want. We want to understand who do you want to be? How do you want to contribute? How do you think about your social environment? Their response, resoundingly to us, was they want to understand everything for and by Black women. And so understanding that there's no other institution that could do that better than Spelman College. So we are combining our strengths to our growth. Our strength is STEM, expanding it to clinical chemistry, clinical science, and attaching it to our Center for Black Entrepreneurship so that our young women can understand when you want to be in this space, and Maud's a prime example of this, how do you combine the sciences and commercialize that? So we have young women that have patents in this space. We have a new Makers Lab at our campus. We opened our new Center for Innovation and the Arts in January of 25. And in that, it's a physical building, but it's also a new academy in that building. It has state-of-the-art innovation lab. It's a Makers Lab. It's also our drama department, our dance department. So every piece of technology is brand new in that building.
And I love that you're leaning into technology and really seeing it as a differentiation when it comes to being competitive in the market. But while we've talked about the strengths, I want to talk a little bit about the gaps as we talk about Black women. And one of the big things we've seen with the beauty gap has been around the current struggle of not having products that work with our skin tone, the inclusivity gap there, having hairstylists that can't work with all our textures. And with the work that we do at BBR, when we started to dig in a little bit more, what we found was that at the critical decision-making points, whether that is with chemists, researchers, marketers, there wasn't representation. So I'd love to hear a little bit more when it comes to those core disciplines and opportunity. What is Spelman doing to help change that narrative around having representation in critical decision-making points?
Sure. So part of the work we're doing in order to fund the work that we see around our growth in this space is to partner with corporations. And it's been really amazing to me the number of companies that are approaching us. And in the past, when companies approach us, they talk to us about scholarships, and we will take those every day. Those are very, very important to help us fund the cost of education. But we're having broader conversations right now. We're talking about, should our students be an ambassador for your company? And if so, how financially rewarding is that for them as a student? So let's start before you get into looking at your permanent job. We're also asking about summer internships, but we're also showing them the relevance of the work that we're doing real life in our labs and connecting it to their gaps in their business models. And so we're having a different kind of conversation versus maybe a corporation showing up on campus on career day. And so as we modernize the academy, we have to have a different talk track and a different requirement of who we're partnering with. And it's really important to us.
So even speaking a little bit more about the partnership, how do you decide which companies and brands to work with and collaborate with as you're continuing to build the centers of excellence and programs?
Yes, you'll hear more about this when one of our faculty will join the stage in just a moment. But we have created our own plan and what we want to actually happen on our campus and for our students. And the science that we know is important and where the gaps are. And we're asking these companies to partner with us. Now, we are learning from them at the same time. We don't know everything, so I don't want to make it seem like we've got all the answers, but it's more of a partnership. And we're finding the gaps in science that some institutions have not invested the time because it wasn't relevant to them. But they're recognizing those numbers that you heard earlier about as Black women, how much do we purchase every year? They see it as a real gap. And so I think the timing is now trying to reconfigure. And I will speak a little bit about DE&I. I think the whole idea of when we talk about skin science, we're talking about the range of skin science. So if something were to be patented at our college, it may or may not be just on Black skincare because there's a wide variety. That span is very large. So it's more about that full span of textured hair, that full span of skin science. And then we can't ignore that we are multicultural within our culture. And so we want to address all of those disciplines.
So I think just to lean a little bit more on the money, right? The economic side, as you've alluded to, President Brewer, what we find is that there's a growth in terms of the spend of Black women, which is really great, right? So contribute more than 12% of the spend in beauty, which equates to about 9.5 billion, right? So really big dollars. But what we find is that only less than 3% of that revenue is Black owned. So we spend a lot, but yet underserved in terms of the opportunities and what we need. We are big consumers of beauty, but we're not owners. So I'd love to hear your perspective and the work that Spelman is doing around equity and ownership and the importance of changing those percentages so we own more as it relates to our beauty story.
So I think that's why we have taken our STEM sciences one step further and combined it with our Center for Black Entrepreneurship, because we're also teaching these young women the importance of ownership in that process. So part of our CB&E program is that we have venture capitalists come to our campus and we have VC Day. And our students have left with seed money. And so now I was a chemistry major at Spelman. I knew nothing about finance when I finished my education at Spelman. But now we're encouraging our students to do things like take a few classes from our economics department, understand financials a little better. But when they accept that VC money, they have to understand that it's an investment and a payback. And so that's a little bit different than mommy gave me some startup money, right? This is an institution that's going to give you an interest rate and they're going to come looking for you. And so we're trying to teach them a different way of thinking about how they expand outside of the academic walls.
Yes. And I think even leaning more into ownership and founders, one thing that resonated with me with a recent summit that we had was a Black beauty founder talked about, while yes, we create products for Black women, we create products that serve an entire market. We don't only create for Black women. And one of the things that we've seen within that is an example with Fenty, right? It was something that was created where Black women were centered, but it was for a global market. So I'd love to hear and learn a little bit more when it comes to Spelman. How is Spelman leaning into providing solutions that benefit the entire beauty industry, yet keep us centered so we're not lost in that narrative as Black women?
Well, we are starting with basic research, right? And the research will lead you to market opportunities. Data tells the real truth more than anything else. And so that is why this expansion in the sciences is where it needs to start. We have some of our students that are in the Maker's Lab looking more at, the packaging of goods, right? That's one part of it. But it's all going to end and start and end with the sciences. And so I think that will lead us to where are the opportunities, where are those gaps? And so it will be fact-based, data-based that leads us to how do you then execute upon that?
And then when it comes to the overall execution, how are we ensuring that the recognition continues to go to Spelman? Because what we find sometimes is we don't get the recognition we deserve. We come up with the data, the insights, the stats, and it ends up in somebody else's overall research and study. So how do we ensure that the work that Spelman is doing is truly protected?
Yeah. I'm so glad you asked that question because we were sitting in front of a very large consumer products company and our overzealous young women began to talk about their ideas and we just had to grab them for a minute and say, let's hold that conversation. Because they're excited. They don't understand how that happens. But we are bringing on a legal team inside of the of the college. I'll be honest with you, Spelman has never had an internal legal general counsel. And so we're in the process of staffing up a legal counsel at this time.
Fantastic. And I love that because it makes it truly multidimensional
Right.
and that we're protected in all facets, especially with young students as they're developing this when it comes to beauty, science, and that evolution. So the other question I have for you, President Brewer, is kind of thinking more around legacy. So what's been really great is you and Spelman have defined this moment in creating this program that hasn't been seen. And for me, it's what do you hope the legacy will be of the cosmetic chemistry program? In 5 to 10 years, what will we be celebrating in terms of the success of this program?
You know, what I hope we celebrate is that we see leaders like Maud and others that are multidisciplinary. When they are offered an opportunity, they know how to go from soup to nuts.
Yes.
And that's a term used a lot in, corporate environments, is that you're unshakable because you're grounded in something. First of all, being at a HBCU, all Black women, you're going to leave there with your chest poked out in the first place, right? But the second piece is that you know that you've got the really deep knowledge.
Yes.
And you may go into a corporation, but what I really hope is that we graduate a young woman that says, I might start off corporate, but I'm going to end up in my own independent, if ever needed or if ever desired. So it's about giving our young women optionality. And so if I, am so honored to be in front of a group like this or anyone else, I want to see Spelman graduates, and I really would love for other institutions to copy off of us.
I love that. I love that. And I think for me, the beauty in what you're doing is around empowerment. It's about legacy. It's about understanding that while we can go into the corporate realm and really play in the value chain, we can be the chemist, we can be the product developer, we can be the lead marketer, we can be the researcher, but we also have the option to own and that impact. And President Brewer, I can't thank you enough for the brilliant, brilliant work that Spelman is doing.
Thank you very much. Thank you.
Yes, it's been an honor to be in conversation with you today. Thank you so much. Thank you.
Thank you again to you both wonderful women. Thank you so much for your contributions today. We're now going to transition to our panel discussion. And so I am very, very honored to present our panelists. First, we have Janelle Stevens, who is the CEO and founder of Camille Rose Naturals, which is the largest Black woman-owned hair care line in the United States. We also have Dr. Kim Lee King, who is a celebrity makeup artist and founder of Wink and Pout Beauty, which is a luxury cosmetic brand which has the distinction of being the first African-American beauty brand to be housed inside the MGM Hotel. We also have Dr. Leet Winfield, who is the division chair of natural sciences and mathematics and the director of the cosmetic science program at Spelman that Ms. Roz was just talking about. And then Dr. Rosalind Gregory Bass, who is associate professor and chair of environmental and health sciences and the health careers program director at Spelman College. So please help me welcome these wonderful panelists. All right, welcome, ladies.
Thank you.
So, Dr. Winfield, we'll start with you. As the leader of Spelman's historic cosmetic science program, can you share how this first of its kind HBCU program is specifically addressing the research gaps in ethnic hair and skin science and what this means for the future of product development?
Well, thank you for that. We are the second program at an undergraduate institution, so we are very proud of that in the U.S. I think it's only 6 worldwide. So there is a lot of area there to mine, but within that, we remember that Spelman is a place designed to train women of African descent. And that positions us to really center the Black consumer in our curriculum, in our lab activities, in our engagement with industry. And from there, we get a chance to examine some underexplored spaces pertaining to melanin rich skin, textured hair, that's missing in research. And so we have projects at our institution that deal with recharacterizing what it means to be a 4C, understanding that even within a 4C, there are multiple dimensions that differentiate one 4C from the next. Validating claims is also very important, and currently there are not a lot of models that allow us to validate those claims as it relates to ethnic communities. So being able to establish those models, those testing procedures and methods would be really important. Once we have that, then we can look to having real life case studies that demonstrate what happens with these products when they're in our hand. And we don't have to be approximated because we know that the industry for some time has been very Eurocentric. And so our models are based on that Eurocentricity. And when the industry started to shift to look at more diverse communities, they brought those same models over. And so when they stopped doing that, they painted us all as a monolith. Like it's like Caucasian, Asian, and African. Those are the three categories that you have on the research side. And so it's very important that we understand that we are not a monolith. We are a range of shades, textures, lifestyles, desires that should inform how products are designed. And so we're hoping to bring that critical lens to what we do, specifically focusing on the fact that beauty does happen at the intersection of race, gender, culture, and of course science, because that's why we're here to bring in the science piece. But we're hoping to empower our students to not only be formulators, that's important when people think of cosmetics, that's what they think of, but being able to identify what's that next unique ingredient that we can incorporate into our products sustainably. I know my colleague is going to talk about that. But also, as we think about creating models, is there a way to 3D bioprint skin and scalp models that'll help us with the testing so that we can get through iterations of how your product performs much faster? We need to think about if we can grow. We're trying to grow collagen in the lab. I think some have grown lab-based collagen so that we can figure out then how to functionalize that to be better effective in ethnic communities. So I think that's kind of where we'll start.
Awesome. Thank you. Dr. Bass, from your lens of scientific innovation, how important is it to have diverse voices in the research and development phase of beauty products? And also, what changes have you observed in the industry, in the industry's approach to inclusive formulation and just in general? I know Dr. Winfield just was mentioning sustainability. Yeah, can you speak to all of that?
Yes, thank you so much for that question. I find that being on the forefront on the development of formulation is so very important, and not just being present, but in terms of what type of information are you bringing to the table. And that brings us back to my purview around how are we preparing the next generation? How are we thinking about curriculum and training from an interdisciplinary lens so that when they do have a seat at the table, that they're being able to bring so many different viewpoints? I know that for those of us who are working on the front lines with this next generation of thought leaders, we want to have them think about health. We want to have them think about engineering. We want to have them think about the economy and those specific financial pieces that will dictate how their discoveries will actually be implemented as well as shared with the larger scientific community and entrepreneurial community. And so I can say that at Spelman, one thing that we have been thinking about is when we want to have our students come with this interdisciplinary perspective, what are we doing now in terms of their training and their understanding of core disciplines that's going to allow them to be very innovative, to be creative? I know Dr. Winfield just mentioned sustainability. As someone who is chair of the Environmental and Health Sciences Department, there's a lot of conversation around how are beauty products going to be made that will not negatively impact the environment. How are those products going to be packaged so that those particular materials, even the plastics, are going to be things that are going to be environmental friendly? And so what are students coming up with that is going to address all those concerns? And how can we then bridge these thoughts around health? How can we bridge these thoughts around the environment and entrepreneurship so that it makes sense? Because ultimately, that's the bottom line, is how can we do things that's going to make sense?
Love that. Love that. Janelle, my next question is for you. So Camille Rose is a giant. We all love to see it on the shelves. When you launched the brand, you entered an industry where, as we have previously discussed, Black-owned brands face significant systemic barriers, despite Black consumers being major drivers of the beauty spending. Can you walk us through some of the specific entrepreneurial challenges that you encountered, whether in securing funding, gaining retail distribution, or competing with established brands when you were new? And what strategies or pivots helped you to overcome those obstacles to build Camille Rose into the powerhouse that it is today?
So my journey, when I started Camille Rose back in 2011, I think was, in fact, I know it was different. I did not have any desire to be in this industry at all. I was simply a mom at home making products and trying to solve a problem for myself and my children. And then wanting to be on this, educate myself on more organic and natural ingredients. And so by the time I went into retail, there was giants before me, like brands like Shea Moisture, who really changed our category and did something phenomenal in retail for our category. So by the time a Camille Rose was born, retailers, they had to listen because of the changes that brands before me did in this category and made. So they were welcoming, everything is about $1. So they were looking for more brands that they can grow, like a Shea Moisture. And so they found a Camille Rose. They found a girl who was in her kitchen whipping up products and said, oh, let me just throw up a website because I want other people to try. I'm trying to help somebody. And so they came after me. I didn't go after any retailer at all. And then I think they were smart enough. They listened to the consumers. People that looked like me, had my skin tone and my texture. They went into those shelves and they had a choice right there. When you purchase the product, that's like a vote. So they were purchasing products in our category. So they didn't have a choice but to listen and pay attention. So that's when you saw more representation of textured hair girls, brown girls, everywhere throughout the retail stores, all on the shelf talkers, billboards, whatever. And then, so for me, by the time I got to my first retail meeting, it wasn't me asking them, they were asking me. And I was in a position to say how to determine how many retail stores that I could handle and I wanted to be in. They wanted to give me way more doors than I could handle. I was at home hand making these products. I only took a small number, which may be laughable to you guys when you hear it, but to me, it was setting myself up for a win. So they wanted to offer me like over 1,000 doors, and I said, no, I'll take 100. So we landed on 107. And so but my challenge was not so much getting on the shelves, it was making sure that my products stayed on the shelves when they were there. And that is a challenge because I went into the retail stores with some really dope brands that really did not last. And so my challenge was finding a manufacturer to help me mass produce my products that believed in the same things that I believed in. For the first year, my struggle was huge with those 107 doors because that meant to me I had to meet the demand and meet the orders. And I handmade every one of those products for the first year in a major retail store. And that was a huge struggle to me. I knew nothing about how to get a manufacturer. I didn't know anything about that. You know, I'm all self-taught. And so by the time that second year came around, that's when I say I got to pivot. I got to figure it out. It's not a game. It's a real business.
Awesome. Kim, you wear many, many hats, but in your role as a celebrity makeup artist, you've worked with clients across all the spectrums of skin tones and beauty needs. How has the industry evolved, in terms of inclusivity during your career? And where do you still see gaps that could be addressed through better education and research?
I appreciate you asking that question. Being in the industry for over 30 years, I know I don't look much older than 30, but I've been in the industry for over 30 years, and inclusivity was not even a term used. It was not a buzzword. It was nothing that we were even familiar with. And what we did is we would have, I actually looked at the fashion show and I envisioned myself at Caucus 30 years ago doing makeup and not having the color selections to be able to satisfy the needs of all of those models, and having to create shades and having to mix in eyeshadow with other products to deepen the color and actually become my own chemist. And so, it was really disheartening because we only had a few brands that actually honored our skin tone and our needs. And so as the years have gone by, I think what people fail to realize is that us being inclusive does not mean we're properly represented. We still have lots of strides to make in the beauty industry because we have lots of issues with our skin. We have vitiligo, we have hyperpigmentation, we have folliculitis barbae. We have issues in the skin tone of African Americans that actually are very, very different when women are sick, or maybe they've had too much to drink, or they have sleep deprivation. There are lots of factors that actually make a difference in how I choose colors. And because the colors are not always available, or because the technology is not there where we have a product that is actually high performance, where it actually helps to remedy an issue. We just have a color that's laying on dead skin. How is it that we can remedy that without taking them to an esthetician? So I think that is something that we need to really consider. And I'm excited about what's happening at Spelman with the science department and us going deeper, taking a deep dive into color, beyond color selection, but also what you said about how the product is actually formulated and, what it's packaged and if it is going to be safe for the environment. Those things really matter. We have clients now, and I want you to understand this. We have customers now that are very educated. People, you can't just tell them anything. You can't just say, put this on your face. But my clients are asking me the hard questions, and we need to be able to answer those questions. So the gaps that I am seeing in the beauty industry is a lack of education. Sometimes we are, as the artist, we're not educated, but the consumer is. The consumer is asking the questions that concern them. They want to know, is this product going to cause an adverse reaction later down the line? Is this going to, like, I have a spray that I use, and I won't say the name of it, but it went viral because there is there's an artist who is viral, and she came to DC, and it was raining really hard, and she was able to withstand the rain, and her face never moved, and that product went viral.
Say
And
the name. You got to say the name. We want the product.
OS went viral. Here's the problem with OS. OS went viral, but when I spray it on my client, they almost feel like they're going to choke. So there's something in the product. It actually reminds me of a hairspray for the face. I call it a spank for the face. And so it reminded me of a product like that, but it to me just did not feel like, and I would tell my client, step back, jump in it and step back. Now, you shouldn't have to jump in and step back with a product, but the reality is the customer wants the face to hold, but is it holding at a cost? And so that is what is a concern for me as a 30-year vet, is not just having a product that lasts, but having a product that's safe. So I think that is something I'm interested in, seeing those gaps to be filled in the beauty space. And I am really grateful for the programming that is at Spellman, because I'm looking forward to, even in my product that I own, I have a product brand called Wink and Pout, and we teach women how to create a fast face with a Hollywood finish. But I am also concerned about what the product is made of. I'm concerned about what the packaging is made of. I'm concerned about if it has been animal tested, if it's been tested on animals. I'm concerned about all of that when I reach out to my manufacturers, because unfortunately I'm not at a space where I can actually curate a product from scratch. I don't have a chemist yet. So those things matter to me, and they also matter to the consumer. So I'm very careful about choosing products when we do a private label, that we are choosing products that are going to be advantageous not only for the customer, but for the environment that the customer lives in.
Gems. I love it. This question is just for the general panel. What role does consumer education play in driving demand for more inclusive beauty products? And how can we better equip consumers to make informed choices that support diverse ownership and scientifically backed formulations?
Well, I'll say, first of all, we're going to hire Kim to our makeup physiology and anatomy course, because she has all of, come on. But that, so I'll just, as I'm steering away from your question, I'll say this, because one of the big gaps that we need to mind, especially in our community and creating things for Black consumers, is the gap that's between the practitioner and the person at the bench. So the bench needs to understand how the practitioner needs it to feel and to move and to smell, and the perception of the use. And we also need to know what, vice versa. You know where I'm going with this, right? And so I think that's also important to closing some of those research gaps. How do we work together better so that we're not iterating in the lab and getting to a place where we're excited about what we see, and then the practitioner gets it and they're like, well, I can't do this. I need I heard Sam say this actually. There's some things that he really likes, but he has to take a hairdryer to it before he can use it.
Absolutely. We certainly have to. There are products that are listed and they say that they do certain things. And unfortunately, as an artist who is bivocational, so I'm not only an artist, but I also, own a brand, I am responsible for making sure that the product that I place on your face is doing what it says it's supposed to do without the extras, right? Because I have to be accountable to that. So those conversations are definitely important, because our ear is to the ground. We're listening to clients every day, and then we're also allowing them to perform. We're seeing them in real time, right? So we're able to see how the product performs under lights, in extreme temperatures, with extreme things happening inside of a woman. We have perimenopause. I never knew about perimenopause 20 years ago. I'd never even I heard of menopause, but not perimenopause. So you're telling me that for years prior to menopause, I'm going through hot flashes and I'm going through, loss of hair and all these things. And so these are things that customers are asking us, clients are asking us, and we need to be able to provide them with the technology and the products that are going to be suitable for them.
And I would like to comment on this as well, because as soon as you said literacy, that is something I'm extremely passionate about from a health perspective. When looking at a lot of the studies that are coming out and we find out where are people making their decisions about beauty, many times it's from the influencers, social media, and overall health ideas and understanding is coming from what individuals are reading on the internet. And we understand that, right? Because we know that of all the doctors, there are only 5.6% that are Black physicians. And we also understand, even among all scientists, only 9% are Black scientists. And so we have to be able to stay hopeful and encouraging that next generation to take space and to be able to ask the hard questions and to be able to fill that gap so that individuals are getting the accurate information they need in order to be able to be informed consumers and to do things that are helpful and not harmful to their systems, both now and in the long term.
And I'll say, following up on those statistics, having those numbers in STEM, people may think, oh, so it's just science, mathematics, that has nothing to do with beauty. But actually, because there is such a deficit in STEM, then the beauty industry does not have the skilled professionals who look like us, who can really drive how those products are being developed. And so you have the issue that Camille Rose had with, having people that they could trust to manufacture the product, or having, products that you can trust when you're working with your clients. It's all impacted. But I'll also turn it back on us as educators and practitioners, is that we have to also demystify science, right? Especially when it comes to some of the trendy claims like clean, which is not a regulated term, right? So having students to having not students, sorry, I'm not teaching today, but having consumers to understand that when they hear a term like clean, they should ask, by are carbon free. Let us come and talk to me if you think you eat or use anything that's carbon free. I'll be right over here. But yeah, it's so that they understand when I'm saying I'm using a clean product, this is what I mean. But also for those things that do have definitions like clinically tested or science backed, they need to know the questions to ask in terms of, well, how was it clinically tested? And what do those results say about me? And does that mean that this product was made for me? And who was it tested on? So as I said earlier, we talk about foundations and color shades because that's where we've seen the most contention and the most movement. But there are other areas that we need to also educate on and move to. But in terms of education, I'll just say making sure consumers understand what's on the label, what it means, and that the way ingredients are listed on a label is very specific and is communicating something.
I'll just jump in too and say, like, from my experience, well, I definitely know consumers are now label readers and they are educated and smart. And when I was trying to find a laboratory to help me produce my products, I got so much pushback from chemists because they got offended that me, a kitchen chemist is what I called myself, would come into their lab and try to tell them about natural ingredients and what I wanted in my product. A lot of pushback. And they wanted me to use synthetic ingredients because it was cheaper, for them. So that was a huge struggle for me. It took me almost a year to identify a manufacturer that have the same beliefs that I did.
I just wanted to just piggyback on that in terms from the scientific perspective about foundations that I think is definitely a conversation we need to continue with because I always tell my clients, they've taken the eggs out the cake and now we have to put the eggs back in the way of primers and setting sprays. Remember a time when you would put your foundation on and it would last all day? And now if you don't prime it or set it, now it falls apart. So you have to chemically be educated about how your skin performs. And with all of the choices, when we know that this is a way for, manufacturers to, of course, have, make revenue, generate revenue, but it is definitely something the consumer, again, to your point, they're educated. They know their skin. I had clients this morning that told me, I don't like that primer. I like this one. And I'm asking them, how do you know the difference? Because I want to hear how they've educated themselves. Definitely not contending with them, but I'm interested to know. And so these are definitely questions that I think, consumers have that are honest. Like, why is it that I'm formulating my own product so my foundation does last,
I think we have time for one more question. And so I'd like to ask you all, for young people who may be watching this panel or the playback, who aspire to enter the beauty industry, what advice would you give them about building authentic brands and careers that prioritize bold innovation and inclusivity? And how can they leverage educational opportunities to make a meaningful impact?
Make sure they educate themselves on the different entry points and how they can maneuver their skill set to enter at that particular point. They also need to be aware of the laws and the policies that are coming out, like the Crown Act, because with that particular policy, it is setting the standard for the need for better products and services as it relates to the way we want to wear our hair. And I think the last one is a big one, is know the regulations. For the first time in the history of cosmetics being regulated, we have a new set of regulations. And they are not what they were in 1930s when they were first written. So there's a lot more accountability being put in place on manufacturers, on individuals who provide raw ingredients. And so knowing these things will help them really showcase how their talents and their resume, if you will, fit the particular need of where they want to enter.
I think from a marketing perspective, I can speak to that briefly. For me, I teach this everywhere I go, even at universities with emerging entrepreneurs. Is that it's important that in this day and time that you become a disruptor. It's very important that you are not trying to fit in, but you're standing out. So when I say a disruptor, if we think about how people travel, they travel by way of car and taxi, but now we take Ubers. Uber was a disruptor. Airbnb was a disruptor. So it's very important that now, because we're overly inundated with product, is that you're solving a problem, that you are a solution-based company. And so I really try to help, entrepreneurs. I don't care if you're selling cupcakes or if you're selling foundation. I want you to be a disruptor and develop something and develop something that is going to disrupt what we know the beauty industry or whatever industry to be.
For me, I have been focused on my acronym of the year, which is HOPE. And I really want individuals that, even though they may not see themselves, in various industries within cosmetics or in science fields, in engineering, etc., for them to be hopeful that they still can penetrate those spaces. The O is for them to take advantage of every opportunity. Even though they may be someone who is interested in healthcare, still go to the economic stocks, still make sure that they go ahead and take advantage of going to anything that may be in the arts. We also want them, in terms of the P, is for them to partner. None of us can get anywhere by ourselves.
And it is so important for people to network, work with their peers, connect with advisors. And then the last E, similar to what latest thought was, is you have to understand the economics of this industry. It has been a billion-dollar industry and it is projected to continue to climb. And therefore, we do not want to be void of some of those opportunities that come forth from the profitability associated with this field and discipline. So everybody continue to stay hopeful, and that's my word.
And I'll just quickly add purpose to that, because you have to really understand your purpose and not get distracted by trends. Really stay focused and keep your vision tunnel.
Thank you so much, ladies, for joining us. When I say us, I mean Peel House. Today on this lovely panel, can you let us know, let the audience know how they can learn more about your organizations and companies?
Well, professors at Spelman College, our website, www.spelman.edu. Our contact information is there. And yes, and I'm willing to speak with anyone afterwards if they want any other specific contact information.
So same here. All of my handles are Laytil Winfield. I think, is that? Okay, good. Yeah. So you'll find me on the website as well, spelman.edu.
And as far as how to contact me, same in all of the media outlets. The Camille, TheeKymlee, or our brand name, which is Wink and Pout. Wink and Pout.
And Camille Rose is CamilleRose.com. We are on every social media platform at Camille Rose Naturals, and we are sold in every major retail worldwide.
And again, we are Peel House Aesthetics and Plastic Surgery. We are spelled Peelhaus, so the German spelling. And my partner over there, Sonia, has information if anyone wants to learn more about our services.